Welcome to Picks with the Professor, sports betting show brought to you by a real statistics professor. This is college football week 3 for the 2024 season. Last week, it did not go as well as we hoped. For now, at least, it's early in the season. We're kind of hovering around the break-even mark on our top picks, those A-plus grades. We did not give all of those out on the free show. Gave out most of them, but not all of them. So, again, remember all the A-plus grades over on Dub Club. And, again, keeping the season numbers from last year to show, we still have optimism. We aren't worried. Last year, we had the same sort of thing. It's going to be up and down. Unfortunately, every week's not going to be profitable, but we're going to have more big weeks than we have bad weeks. Because, Jared, I mentioned this to the Dub Club, that it really felt like a shoulda, coulda, woulda week. There were so many things that were so there were so many things that we waffled. The model had 2 A grades or 2 B grades, something we waffled, and I think we picked like 2 of them correctly, and I think we went the wrong way on like 6 of them. When we were kind of iffy. There were a lot of weird things happening. Of course, one huge upset. There was so much talk about viewer. I'm going to timestamp. I never do this because we're covering 24 games on this show, and going through the timestamps on that is too much time for me. But I am going to timestamp because I feel like we have a lot to talk about here. So if you're not interested in discussing the last week, I think it's important to discuss the last week because, how do we learn? How do we grow? How do we, what are we seeing? That sort of thing. I think it's good discussion. We're going to stay on topic, but if you are only interested in this week's pick, there will be a timestamp in the description so you can fast forward to that because I'm nervous. We're going to spend like 15 minutes talking about all the things from last week.
We could.
Before we get to that, NFL Week 1 went really well. We've got a show on that, so make sure you're seeing that show. Of course, it went well. The A grades did well again, just like it seems like always happens in the NFL. It's just the gift that keeps on giving. So hopefully we can continue that NFL stuff. Also, of course, on Dub Club, and again, there's a free YouTube show. Make sure you catch that one as well. You can get everything streamlined on Dub Club, all the picks, all the projections summarized nice and neat. So you don't have to listen to hours and hours of content if you don't want to. That QR code is the link in the show description will get you there. We have a football only package as well that you can get for $99.99 here if you use the promo code football. A bunch of discounts still available for the longer tier prices, some trials on the shorter prices. Have a new 2-week package as well if you want to just dip your toe in the water. A lot of reasons to be on Dub Club. Because Jared, let's talk about week 2.
Let's do it.
So much talk about that we decided to actually make a new document just to make sure we didn't miss anything. First off, SMU. We found out today that they are now going with the backup quarterback, a little more mobile, a little bit of offensive line issues. What is going on with SMU? It feels like we were so high on them. They were so good to us last year. They made us so much money. And the bowl flop was a little bit of like who was playing, who tried, whatever. That wasn't a big deal. But things are not going well in Dallas. What's your take on this SMU fiasco?
Well, and I will wear it. I came on to this show one of the first weeks of the season, and I said I am not worried about SMU at the quarterback position. It was the first game against Nevada. I was like, it doesn't matter who's playing. They are going to find a way to score points because they took both of their quarterbacks to media day. They have so much faith in them. Preston Stone was a great G5 quarterback last year. Jennings got to play some later in the season when Stone got hurt. He played well. I said all of that. Looking back at it, I should have known or realized when you have 2 quarterbacks, you got none. And I feel like that is the situation that SMU has found themselves in. And obviously not that either quarterback has played great this season, but the way that they've been switching them in and out, neither quarterback has necessarily had a ton of reps and consistency to get into a rhythm. So I'm a little bit higher on them now that at least we know they won't be splitting reps, and Jennings will be, have an opportunity to kind of get in a rhythm and build some confidence. But yeah, those past 2 weeks was not what I expected, or I guess the first week against Nevada and then last week against BYU, not what I was expecting at all from SMU. They would have been my dark horse pick in the ACC this year, and that even as poorly as the ACC has looked this year, I still have no faith that SMU is going to be able to make any noise in that conference this year.
And we have more to talk about with the ACC coming up shortly. Throughout the whole show, really, there's a lot that we'll hit on there. The last thing I want to say about that, just I feel like I would be remiss if we did not present the glass half full case for SMU, which is that first game against Nevada was wonky. Weird things happened. They were better than the score indicated. That's still bad because Nevada's bad. BYU's defense maybe looks as good as it's looked in a decade, too. I don't know.
They have looked good.
I'm really interested because SMU either doesn't play this week. I think I could correct me if I'm wrong, or doesn't play anybody that's real.
We don't have a pick on SMU this week.
I don't think
what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be really curious. I think BYU does play, and I'll be really curious to see how BYU looks as we go forward, because that'll give us a little bit of insight on, if somebody else puts up 40 on BYU, then it'll be like, oh my gosh, SMU is in so much trouble. But they should be good. They brought back so many people from last year, so it's a little bit of a surprise, and we're definitely both cooling off of them a little bit. But I don't know. I think they really they need something to turn this around from what's becoming a really disappointing season. Pittsburgh, we saw today, they are the third fastest team with regards to snaps, and yet they game still went under Force.
And not particularly close to going over.
No,
and that was
a comfortable winner, really. Other than at the end, we were hoping to avoid overtime.
And even with the barrage of points there at the end from Pitt, still not close to going over necessarily.
I think I don't have a ton to say about this. The one thing I was going to say is I think it's a good reminder to people. We talk about pace a lot, and pace can really matter. Everything matters. Everything matters in certain ratios, and that's why I built a model to help us understand as we project things, really where maybe we think that the books are misinformed and weighting things poorly. You can't only focus on tempo, because you've seen it with Pitt, they can play fast, and yet there can be situations where maybe that doesn't necessarily translate into a bunch of points based off of other things happening. And so pace matters. Absolutely. It's just part of it. And it's just something to remember that you got to throw it in the pot, make sure it's weighted correctly. And then that doesn't mean a fast paced team is always going to go over. It matters with the numbers. That number got bet up and up and up. And we were both a little bit hesitant after that first week. We knew, we saw them playing faster, and we held off, and we were like, I don't know about this. And then the number kept going up and up and up, and we sent that out to our people in Dub Club and said, look, at some point this is ridiculous. We just can't. And like you said, it was a no sweat under, which was nice. So just something to kind of remember. Early slot.
Well, and I was going to add on that. Very, very good point. Pace does not matter. That was one thing I wanted to say. The other thing is you have to be really careful when you're looking at teams such as Kent State, who Pitt's offense looked like they were amazing against Kent State. And they play a team like Cincinnati. That's Kent State. And so there are certain teams, and unfortunately Kent State is in that realm this year, where you just almost have to set aside anything that happens in games with those teams participating, because they are just, relative to everybody else, not as talented, or you're not performing nearly as well. And so you just kind of have to set that aside. So Kent State, we're going to put them in the list of, hey, we just need to set most of their outcomes aside.
Also in the early slot, Michigan, of course. I don't know what to say. I mean, we knew Michigan's offense would take a step back. It did. We knew Texas was really good. They were really good. I think it's a little surprising how dominant Texas was. We already had Texas as one of the top teams. Nothing's changed with that. Michigan takes another hit in the model grade ranking, whatever you want to look at it. Because I don't know if you have anything to add to that other than just, we went into this game thinking if Michigan's defense can be 95% as good as last year and their offense takes a hit, then this game might be ugly, 13 to 11. And, that was the way Michigan had a chance to pull the upset. And, Michigan lost a lot last year, and it turned out to be kind of the worst case scenario for me. I mean, is there anything really other to add than that?
I think no. I think what Michigan had last year, we talk a lot about Michigan's defense, but I think what Michigan had on offense last year was special when you go back and look at, what Blake Corum was able to do. So
all those linemen.
All those linemen. Yeah. I think Michigan's still a good team. I think they're going to still do plenty well against most of the competition in the Big Ten. That game I think shows they're not quite in the same stratosphere as they were last year.
I think I saw the look-ahead line against Ohio State is Ohio State minus 17. And after you saw what Texas did to them, I don't think you could really argue much with that, right? I mean, you could say you'd lay it or take it, but I mean, that feels like it's in the right ballpark, which is crazy to think about after last year, in the last several years. Auburn, Cal, neither one of us saw like a single play in that one, but what in the world, like, is Cal going to be decent? We talked about them last year with a new coach and new offense, and like maybe they're going the right direction. Auburn's had some turmoil, like. Do we think that one thing said more about one school than the other? Or was that just a weird game? Like what?
And the thing is like it's Hugh Freeze, man. Like you just literally do not know what you're going to get game to game unless you're playing, Nick Saban or one of the big dogs in the SEC. Then you're going to get a good game from them. But I mean, isn't this exactly what we did with Hugh Freeze when he was at Liberty? We would back him in the big games and fade him against the no names. And Cal isn't necessarily a no name, but relative to the other SEC, relative to the rest of the schools on Auburn's schedule, definitely one of those. I guess we should have known. Like we should listen to our past selves, and we would have been back in Cal in that game. But it seems like everything that's old is new again. Something to keep in the back pocket. And they lost New Mexico State last year. Anyway, we need to, and we backed New Mexico State in that game, if I recall. We just need to keep that in mind. Going.
Auburn really struggling against a mid-tier ACC team in Cal, which is some weird words to say. Alabama. Really slow start. I had given up on the game, and then they won by like 26. Like I thought we were dead in the water laying the points. Like, is there something with South Florida that's just like they started off well against Alabama, or do we have any concerns about Alabama going forward? Is this just kind of growing pains, new coach year one? Like, what's our take on that?
I do not have any concerns with Alabama. If we go back and think, how many times did we see Washington in a game early last year and they ended up putting teams away? Not saying that it's just what Kalen DeBoer teams do, but DeBoer showed us last year.
He's comfortable doing that.
Yes. It's not anything abnormal from what we've seen from his teams in the past. And maybe there just is something with South Florida. I have no idea what it is, but maybe there just is something specifically with South Florida.
The coaching staff or whatever.
They just got a good game plan. I don't know.
Yeah. And Alabama, obviously, with the top tier athletes they have, could play games where they are physical and by the end of the game are really wearing them down. So that's not crazy. Something to keep in mind, especially if you're a life better. Kansas, really disappointing. A couple of big turnovers, I feel like, swung that game. Were you more sad, maybe sad's not the right word, more disappointed in Kansas, or were you more impressed and think, hey, Illinois might actually be okay? I know we weren't really high on Illinois. We thought Kansas had a real good shot at the Big 12. Has any of your thoughts on that changed? How much of it is just it's one game, like turnovers are random and we're not going to
I would lean more towards this was just a random thing. It's one game. I don't think it says too much about either team. We've seen Illinois play good in spurts under Bielema, and then they just forget how to play offense at times. Kansas, I'm not worried about Kansas, but one thing that I am watching for is Kansas's offensive coordinator left in the offseason to go to Penn State. And are we going to see the same level of consistency out of their offense? I mean, I don't want to sit here and tell you that Kansas is the favorite in the Big 12. I mean, the Big 12, who the heck knows with the Big 12? But I didn't see anything there that would change my mind. I think they're going to be in the mix in the Big 12, but I am watching their offensive consistency going forward. Like, is this a team that we would feel comfortable backing their overs if the number's in the right place? Or would we want to lay, 6.5 points or take the money line? Like, those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about when I'm considering offensive consistency.
And that turnover at the end of the first half, I feel like just completely flipped that game and they lost by one score. Colorado, Nebraska, the joke for years was Texas is back. Is the joke now going to be Nebraska's back? And that was the joke, of course, because everyone said it and then it wasn't true. And no one said that about Nebraska at all here. But like, man, we've said Matt Rule is a great coach, as a Baylor alum. I saw that. We saw it at Temple. Didn't do well in the NFL. Also, the Panthers are just a train wreck. So that's a whole other story. We knew things were going in the right direction with Nebraska. We knew the quarterback would be a huge thing. We really thought Colorado seems to hang in as a dog and struggle as a favorite, and they just got they got Oregon. It was the team last year that destroyed them. Nebraska, are they for real? Are we starting to be a little optimistic about them?
Well, you could have looked back at this on last year and had seen that Matt Rule was putting the infrastructure in place where they were going to be a successful team once they identified a quarterback, and they got the quarterback. And which
is just what he did at Baylor.
Yeah. And so I can't say that I am terribly surprised. Like in that game, the first half there was a lot of points, but then when you look at the final score, it's like, yep, Matt Rule game. Like, I mean, exactly like you would have expected. So Nebraska is kind of maybe a little bit ahead of schedule of what I thought, but long term, exactly where I would have expected them to be with Matt Rule. Colorado, on the other hand, and you can go get your Colorado hot takes in 100 other places. You don't need to come here for them, but I just have to get it off my chest that I can't believe we're talking about all of the exact same things with Colorado that we were talking about the last 2/3 of last season. The amount of time that Shedeur Sanders spends getting rushed, getting hit
on his back.
On his back. I mean, it's really
scrambling like for his life.
Yeah, it's just really unbelievable. They had back-to-back plays there in the first half where he was just, I mean, from the time the ball was snapped, he was basically on the run. So I can't believe that we're still talking about the same things. Like you would have thought at least that would have been like the primary area of focus, and maybe there's some other areas that suffer because you're gonna shore up that one weakness, but it seems like the exact same thing as it was last season. Just surprised they didn't make more changes and adjustments there.
And I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to be the hot take guy. That's not really our avenue. But it does make you wonder with regards to Deion and coaching and I think we talked about this last week. Coaching at the college level requires you to be good at like 6 different things that are all kind of not really related to each other. And it's really hard to be good at all 6 of them. And there are definitely some things Deion does really well. Figuring out how to put together an offensive line apparently is one of them. Figuring out how to prioritize what the team needs, whatever it may be. And so again, he does a lot of things really well, but yeah, his deficiencies are shining through. You're almost seeing him being so good at certain areas and so weak at others. So it's really costing him here. But yeah, I'm like you. I'm high on Nebraska. It seems a little bit early for the true freshman. Like you never want to buy the hype train too much, but man, I think if you were on that hype train for Raiola, you got to be feeling good about your positioning there. Clemson. I mean, that to me, I know people are talking about Notre Dame in the upset. We'll talk about Notre Dame later. But to me, that was the most surprising thing. Not that they won and not that they covered, but the fact they were up like 100-0 at the half. Yeah. And I'm not saying App State, we knew would take a step back. We knew a lot of the Sun Belt teams take a step back. That's why I had texted you and said I think Texas State's got a chance to win the Sun Belt because all the really good teams took a step back, and I thought Texas State was the only one that didn't. We'll talk more about Texas State here shortly. But like App State's still going to be decent, and like that was insane. Like that was all the offense that we've been hoping for from Clemson. If you're just a football fan for the last like 3 years, all put together in one game. Like how much of that was just fluky luck? How much has Clemson turned a corner and figured like what's your
team?
You can't not talk about that. You have to have some thought about that to guide you going forward because that was not a normal Clemson performance.
So. Okay, I wanted to, it's something that you just said, I wanted to look at that game and be like, look, here is everything that Clemson is capable of. Here is what we have been missing for the past 2 years, 3 years at this point. This is, I don't want to say proof of concept, but this was proof that Clemson still has it. But I will caution you, if you go back and look at that box score, that is... I don't want to say the plays were fluky, but the number of big plays that they hit in the first half of that game. I mean, if they were out there playing, no offense to the hometown team here, but Houston Christian, like if they were playing Houston Christian or something, sure, that would be expected. But
you couldn't even gone up a step and said Houston or Rice. You had to go with Houston Christian.
Yeah, I mean that's what I feel like would have to happen. And I mean, again, you mentioned like App State. Perfectly good team. Like there is nothing, I don't think anything perfect wrong with App State.
We'll see. I don't think so either, but maybe we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah. That is it's just not possible. I mean, the big plays were coming right and left. The amount of random variance that had to occur there for so many big plays to happen. Is this good for building Clemson's offensive confidence on offense? Yes.
Yeah.
Did they need that confidence? 100%. Yes. But I don't want anybody to get carried away with that, because that a lot of things had to go right, clustered together to make that happen.
I'm gonna counter that with one thing. I'm gonna buy a tiny bit of stock. I'm not gonna buy a lot of this stock. I'm gonna buy the tiniest bit of stock of. I'm just thinking about when Baylor turned things around back with RG3 a long time ago. Part of that was RG3. But even after he left, those quarterbacks that were there, that were a lot of them you would call quote unquote system quarterbacks, until you got to Petty, who, if he could have stayed healthy, I think could have at least been a solid NFL backup. But he just had so many injury issues. But so many of those guys, Baylor's offensive identity turned into the big play. They were going for it. And when they struggled, they couldn't get it. But they got it more times than not, because that was what they were going to go after. I'm not saying this is Clemson, but I do want to put on record just a tiny bit. Like, I'm wondering, like, is it possible that Dabo's heard all this about the offense, and after that Georgia game, having the whole offseason to prep and say, this is how we're going to attack Georgia, and it completely falling flat? Is it possible that they were like, you know what, we're going to have big plays, and we're just going to go for the big play all game long, and we're going to get 5 of them, and that's going to be how we're going to win? I don't think so. I don't actually think that's right. That doesn't strike. Dabo doesn't see me as a guy that strike me as like, I'm going to hear this, and then in the middle of the season, I'm going to completely change what I want to do. But knowing that, like, that would be an interesting path for Clemson to take, to say, we've tried old school football, we've tried normal, just marching down the field, and it doesn't work. And so we're just going to have to go for the home run ball every play, or every drive or whatever. And if we 3-and-out a few, that's fine. But this is the only way we're going to score, is the big play. And so if that's like, that would be an interesting change for them, because again, we've seen what they were doing wasn't working. So is this a new thing? I don't know. Just I'm sort of put that out there, like, because if Clemson's offense is going, it's probably because of that. So anyway, one other thing I'm talking about, I do want to kind of point out, right? We're talking about a lot of the picks that we did get right. We got a lot right. So it's we don't want to talk about the things we got right as much, because what are we going to just pat ourselves in the back, right? Like, you know, the Duke money line, right? Plus odds in a game that went to overtime. Perfect. That's exactly how you draw that up. You won't, if you take plus odds and it goes to overtime, you nailed it, right? You know, South Carolina taking all those points, right? We had Army money line, which was an easy winner. We talked about Texas State. We'll talk about them, right? The San Jose State Air Force under, where we were debating that one and talked about, you know,
and there were 21 points in the first quarter of that game, I think.
And then nothing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we got a lot right, of course. A lot went well, but it is interesting to talk about the things that we kind of were a little bit surprised about. How do we, again, learn from that going forward? Last one, we're almost to this week's slate. Boise and Oregon. You know, I wasn't really worried about Oregon. After Boise hanging in there, are we really worried about Oregon? Are we kind of worried about Oregon? I mean, obviously, Boise, again, has one of the best running backs in the country. How much did it say about Boise? How much did it say about Oregon? What's your take on that?
I have no take from a football X's and O's standpoint. My take is that I feel like there is a West Coast team every year, maybe Washington last year, USC maybe 2 years ago, you know, basically goes to the Pac-12 team, that finds a way to keep every game close. And they could be a really good team, but they're just going to keep every game close. And we are certainly on alert at this point that Oregon is going to be that team this year. Now they're going to have some different challenges being in the Big Ten now, and some of the games that they'll have to play in conference. But
some of the games will stay close by definition of, you can't not play a close game against some of those teams, because the style of football they play does not allow for fun shootout type games.
So I'm not worried about Oregon yet. Like, Boise has Ashton Genty, who's, you know, he makes a lot of big plays. He's really good. If this keeps happening for another few weeks, maybe I'll be concerned, but I still think it's still too easy for me to be concerned about a team that has as much talent and as good at coaching as Oregon does. And you brought up Washington. That's just a great point. We were concerned about them because good teams typically don't keep playing close games. And so we were kind of low on Washington until kind of at the very end. And they were like, that's fine. We could just beat good teams too. And it's like, oh, wow. Like that's unique. It's not exactly what usually happens. And so they could be that. All right, that's all we've got then for last week. Quick reminders here before we get to this week. It's a player-based model. Ratings reflect the current roster, injuries, quarterback changes, all sorts of stuff. Average reads 100 higher implies more points. We are projecting an average game 1 game,
weird things happen. We just talked about a lot of them. But on average, over the long stretch, we do well. So we talk about probability. We do say we know we're going to lose some of these. That's fine. But anything is a good bet at the right price or number, because that tells us that we will win more when we win than we lose when we lose, again, in the long run. We showed it last year. Overall for the season, we're hanging in there, but it's really early, and we are still riding the hype train. Not brought to you by Ice Cold Dr. Pepper, which the hype train runs off of. But, Dr. Pepper, if you're listening, we would love a sponsorship from you.
Yeah.
I drink enough Dr. Pepper. Model gives out A grades, B grades, C grades, loves, likes, and leans. We add the plus if we like it. Let's get to it here. Thursday night, Arizona State, Texas State. And you know what? I saw this game on the schedule over the weekend, looking ahead. And I was like, it was like Sunday, I saw this game. And I was like, I don't want to pick against Arizona State again, because we've picked against them twice and they've won. Yeah. But then we've loved Texas State. And so I was like, oh, I hate this. I absolutely hate this. The model is moving up on Arizona State. Is it moving up fast enough? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. But it is adjusting. Arizona State is clearly better than the model thought, which, again, we talked about. The model's not perfect. It's going to be more wrong on some teams, more right on some teams. It's going to try to adjust to get better, and then it'll, even at the end of the season, it'll keep trying to learn and get better. The Mississippi State half comeback at the end of that game, I don't know what to make of that. Was that Arizona State showing some flaws? Was that just taking their foot off the gas? I don't really know. We have loved Texas State. The model says they win 72% of the time. We're high on Texas State, and I don't necessarily think it's wrong. I mean, we were really high on them against UTSA, and they exceeded those expectations. So I think we're probably either spot on or even undervaluing this Texas State team, who started to turn the corner last year and now looks even better. Are we too low on Arizona State? Possibly. Maybe this shouldn't be 72. Maybe it should be 62. Either way, we're getting even money or plus odds on Texas State. You just can't pass that up. A grade for us, taking Texas State on the money line. It isn't about Arizona State at this point. It's really about Texas State in my mind.
I agree. And I like that Texas State has Jordan McLeod, who was the quarterback for James Madison last year whenever they went on that great run. Not only does Texas State have a good team, but I think having that confidence and that leadership from McLeod can go a long way. A guy who you can say has, for the most part, been there and done that, even in this exact same conference. So I like them mostly because of McLeod. Like, even everything else that you said, if we're undervaluing Arizona State, when you look at the quarterback matchup, I still like McLeod at home. Yeah, even money seems like a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that simple. There's only one Thursday game. I guess there were none last week because the NFL opener. At least we have one this week.
Could I convince you that the best three games of the entire weekend are on Thursday and Friday?
I was going to say I love these three games. Yeah, and we don't even have a pick on this one, but I wanted to cover it because it's one of the more interesting games of the weekend. I think UNLV, who we were very high on, we've got them at number 42 in the country, and people would say we're too high on them, but I don't know. You saw what they did to Houston, and then you know what Houston. What did they do last week?
They barely lost to Oklahoma in Norman.
So I mean, I'm not saying UNLV's a top 10 team, but I'm like, again, going back to like we were high on SMU, that didn't work. Okay, fine, but we were high on Texas State, and that looks good. We were high on UNLV, and that looks good. So it kind of goes back to what I'm saying. The model's kind of right, like 2 out of 3 times on these state stand. The stance it takes, and Kansas, of course, the model didn't really drop them too much for that game last week. It's kind of saying, hey, they played fine. That was a fluky situation. Kansas is at home. We've got Kansas by about 7. That's what the spread is. So no official pick. The total is pretty spot on too. What are you eyeing in this game? If you're just watching it to learn for future, what are you trying to learn? Or are you looking at any of these numbers saying, hey, if a number gets to blank, that's when I can get invested. Personally, I don't have a good feel for this game. I think I like both of these teams, and so I don't really know which way I'd want. Do I want the number to go down and back Kansas? Do I want it to go up and back UNLV? I honestly don't know. What's your stance on it?
What I'm watching, and I kind of alluded to this whenever I talked about Kansas earlier, but I'm watching both offenses in this game. Kansas, can we get that consistency that we've talked about? UNLV has looked good on offense so far this season, and I know I'm still working to like readjust my expectations of Houston going from Dana Holgerson to Willie Fritz. And so,
and we talked about from week one when we talked about the UNLV Houston game, we were like, we think Houston will be fine long term, but we don't know what's going to happen this year. And I think we've seen a bunch of don't know what's going to happen. Two very different outcomes for them.
Yeah. But UNLV's offense has looked good, has one of the better offensive coordinators in all of college football, I would say. And so having a test like this, because as good a coach as Willie Fritz is, Kansas is better than Houston at this point. So I think this is a bigger test for UNLV than Houston was. I want to see how real UNLV can be. And when you go look at their schedule, like we could be talking about UNLV a lot this season. They play Syracuse in a couple of weeks, who Syracuse has looked pretty good so far. Yeah. And then, man, October 25th, we've got Boise and UNLV. That
should be the top two teams in the Mountain West.
Yeah, and I think, my personal opinion, potentially playoff implications in that game on October 25th. So,
I texted you before the season. I was like, "Hey, I think UNLV might be might make a return trip to the Mountain West Championship game." And I think you were like, "Ah." Yeah. I was like, I'm a believer.
Yeah. I am now a believer in UNLV too. So I think if they,
I'm glad to welcome you aboard this band early in the season rather than way later.
Yeah. If they can hang in this game with Kansas, I will be thoroughly impressed.
We don't know what's going to happen in one game. Anything can happen, right? Sports are weird, and everything has a distribution of ranges of outcomes, right? When Alabama plays South Florida, one of the possible outcomes is almost assuredly not South Florida by 30, right? So it kind of moves around based off of the caliber of the teams. A lot of things can happen in this one. I can see a future where UNLV wins this game. Mm-hmm. Kansas falls to 1-2. Losing to kind of a rival in Illinois, losing at home to a G4 or whatever we're calling the school.
Yep.
And people saying Kansas is back to being Kansas again. Like, I could really see that happening. And I say that again as a Baylor fan who I saw every time Baylor started off slow after they were good, it's Baylor. And now we've had so many down years, no one even cares about us anymore. But, I can see that reality. I can see this UNLV team pulling off the upset. I don't think that's crazy. Now, again, Kansas is good, so I don't think that I'm not saying that I think they lose. I'm just saying I can see it. And it wouldn't be the craziest Friday night upset to happen.
Well, but what you just said there about how people are thinking about Kansas is exactly how Kansas is going to knock off some Big 12 team that's in like the top 3 of the standings, because you can't think about Kansas like that. That's not
because they're much more talented. Than that. Also, Friday night game, we do have to pick on Arizona and Kansas State. Sideline loves Arizona's offense, number 7 in the country. And of course, with a wide receiver like that, you can't blame them.
Yeah, 10 catches for 300 yards makes you good?
I guess so. Rumor is number 22 and number 18, according to Sideline. And because, Jared, you mentioned it, the Big 12 is just a chaotic mess at the top of a bunch of really good teams. These might be the 2 best teams. Maybe they're like 5th and 6th. I honestly anything could happen. There's so many teams up there that are fighting for that top spot, but this could be, a preview of a Big 12 championship game. Arizona looked good so far. Kansas State's been good. I mean, this is a real good early season test. I love this on a Friday night where it's kind of standalone. I mean, there'll be some baseball on, but no other football other than that Kansas game. We get to have 2 screens up, watch both of them, and learn about these 2 teams. I cannot wait. We've got Kansas State. I love Kansas State. I love this team. We've backed them a lot so many years. We've only got them in about 4.5. The market has it at 7. We grabbed the 7 with Arizona. B grade for us. The first one, the Texas State, was an A grade. This one's a B grade. But we like grabbing the 7. There's also now some 7.5s out there in the market. And Cousin Jared, I want to ask you, because I was actually looking at this myself with what I wanted to bet here. You can get 7 for closer to even money, minus 105 or better, or you can get 7.5 in the minus 115 type range. But what are you thinking on that? And viewer, you can go, there's calculators out there. I've built a calculator that can tell you exactly which one's mathematically better. I'm not interested in a mathematical answer. I'm just looking from based off, looking at these teams, the offenses, the pace, everything you know about them. Would you rather have the better odds in the 7 and just say if it pushes, or would you rather take the 7.5? What's your take on that?
Well, I'll give you my analysis, and it'll kind of lead into how I'm going
Perfect.
to
Love it.
why I'm going to do it. So I think sideline may be a little bit high on Kansas State. And I don't get me wrong, Avery Johnson has all the potential in the world, but we have not seen that manifest
We've seen it
in
plays. Yeah. But for long stretches.
Yeah, we haven't seen the consistency necessarily. And when I look at that consistency against what Noah Fafita and McMillan are going to do, I have great confidence that the Arizona offense is going to show up. And so I think that there's going to be – I think Arizona's going to stay in this game. Almost no matter what, Arizona is going to stay in this game. So I am personally would take the 7 closer to even money. I like 7 even money is out there. That's what I would recommend taking. I don't want to lay the extra juice when I think there is a good chance that Arizona can win this game outright. For me, it's just like I'd rather save the 15 cents and get the 7 points as opposed to.
Is this a sprinkle in the money line? I'm seeing plus 250, plus 260.
Yeah, I did consider splitting my bet on this one, but I can't. When it gets to a touchdown, I just have a really hard time passing up the points.
It is, and we're going to talk about the same discussion later on in the show. It's the same question for UNLV for this Friday game if people are playing it, because honestly, I look at a game like that and I am so confused on this UNLV Kansas thing. I actually think I would lean more towards the money line and just say Kansas could win that game by 20 or UNLV could win the game. So the money line is enticing to me in UNLV. On this one, I think Arizona can win. I think it's probably worth a sprinkle, but splitting seems a bit tough. It's so tough. And I'm with you on this. I was thinking about this, again, half of sports betting, right? You got to find your mathematical edges and know what smart pick is, but the bankroll management and the sanity part of it. I'm thinking there's just something comforting about it's a tight game late, and you're like, I'm going to win this one. I don't even have to care. I just get to watch and enjoy it. There's something about that. So taking the 7 or the 7.5, depending on what books you have. But folks, of course, always shop around, right? We're talking about shopping around. Make sure you have multiple books in your account. You can find those best things. There are a lot of tools out there to help you as you're shopping around. Every time you can save a nickel or dime, that's going to help your bankroll. If you don't have an account there yet, BetUS is a great book to join.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
That'll take us into the Saturday games. We're going to start off here with North Texas and Texas Tech. Texas Tech, a very disappointing showing against Washington State last week. North Texas looking great on offense, questionable on defense. That's actually more positive probably than I should say. Downright terrible on defense. We saw it a lot last year. It was a lot of fun. They play really fast. Tech's playing really fast as well. We're going to go over on this one, folks. We're going to go over 68.5. The model's projecting more in the mid-70s. Your key numbers here, some people would argue 68. Some people would argue more about 69. I think both are key for different reasons here. I think the question you have to ask yourself is 68 is probably more likely if you end up with drives that stall, more possessions, and more field goals. Whereas, 69 is 2 field goals versus 68's 4 field goals. It's kind of hard with these new rules to get 4 field goals and that many touchdowns in a game. So I kind of think with the way that the clock's done this last year, I kind of think 69 is probably a little bit more key, or even 70 is more key, to be honest, especially then you have going for 2, can kind of throw that off if someone's trying to play catch up. I really think this should be in the mid 70s, even the low 70s at least. Like 73 wouldn't shock me. 72 wouldn't shock me. I'm not really sure why this is so low. We're going over. I'm not sure North Texas can stop anybody. And what we saw with Texas Tech last week, I'm not sure how they're going to stop North Texas. I think this is just going to be a score fest. Cousin Jared, what's your take?
Yeah, so very rarely will I come on here and just kind of just tell you need to make this play just for the sheer entertainment factor. But look at the pace of these two teams. This is going to be chaotic. That is really the only way to describe the way that North Texas
Old school Big 12.
Yeah. That's really the only way to describe how North Texas plays football. And Texas Tech, I think they're going to be more than happy to match that pace. Play this one just for the hell of it. Like, this is just going to be a fun game to watch. It's going to be gross. at times. There's probably going to be turnovers, back-to-back turnovers maybe at some point. But there's also going to be a lot of fireworks. So
and there's going to be like a long touchdown run where there were like 3 missed tackles or something, which is going to be great for us. We're going to love it.
Yeah. So like, again, not often I say this, but like you need to be invested in this because it's going to be entertaining. And Sideline, just of note, Sideline does not throw out numbers like this very often. And so when Sideline gives you a number like almost 76, that's way up there.
These are the numbers we were seeing like last year with USC, which was a team that played fast, had a great offense, and was
no defense,
terrible on defense. Like that's what you saw there. So this should definitely be in the 70s. This is a run, don't walk, in my opinion, because 69 again, I think is your 69, 70 are your keys here. I think so. Over 16.5, a grade over. Also in the early slot, we alluded to this earlier. Talking about some of the. We got one more. Alabama, Wisconsin. Before we get to the next pick, no pick on this one, but we did want to cover this. It's one of the bigger games. I assume this is Big Noon Saturday. Alabama and Wisconsin. Now I can't believe it. This is a conference. Oh no, I guess it's not. That's something else. But doesn't that feel right? Didn't it feel right? To just throw 2 names will be like, I can't believe this is a conference game now. A non-conference game that is, really interesting in the fact that Wisconsin's defense, is going to be the way to keep them in this game. Because how much of this game is a repeat of Texas, Michigan, right? Michigan's defense is good. Wisconsin's defense is good. Wisconsin's defense is not quite as good. So I'm not saying it's an exact comparison, right? But Wisconsin's offense, taking a step back, right? Alabama really good both ways on the road. It's last week it was 7. This week now for this game it's 16 for the quote unquote parallel game. I think that Wisconsin has a better chance than Michigan, in that I think Wisconsin's offense probably has a little bit more upside with Tyler Van Dyke. Can that actually be realized is a very different question. And I think Wisconsin might be in a little bit more trouble because their defense is a little bit worse than Michigan. So there's a case to make for Wisconsin hanging in there more than Michigan was able to in this same setup, right? The I can't believe I'm saying it with Texas, but SEC Big Ten, good SEC team on the road game, right? What is your take? Do you think it's going to play out similar to that game last week? We have no pick on it. The model says it's pretty spot on. This 14 to 17 range seems right, but where's your head at?
If anything, I would probably lean towards the under in this game. Sideline says it's a well set total, but I think Alabama could, just based on what we've seen, maybe have a little bit of a hard time getting going, especially in that atmosphere in Wisconsin. I think that Wisconsin's defense will play plenty fine, but that offense, I don't have a ton of confidence in Wisconsin's offense. Again, not saying I would lay the points. This could definitely be a close game, but I think the odds of seeing both offenses get going in this game are probably not very great.
And we talked about that. Alabama starting really slow last week. And so if they do the same thing here, this could be low scoring. Right now I'm seeing the total 51. Model has it in the right around 50, 51. 51, 52 are your keys. If it gets to 52, 52 and a half, where are you at where you're like, it might be worth it?
Yeah, 52 and a half is where it would be. When Sideline's this close to the number, I want to get that win at 52 and not a push at 52.
All right, there you have it, folks. We talked about it earlier. ACC, we're going to have a lot to discuss here. Florida State, just tumbling in the ratings week after. They don't play as the model,
but rightfully so.
Rightfully so, as the model then gets more data from other teams and readjusts and says, "Oh, well, we thought this about this team, but that team actually isn't as good. That makes you look even worse than we thought you were." All the way down to number 36, and they might keep dropping. I'm not even sure. We've got Memphis as number 29, another team that the model's taking a fairly strong stance on here. We've got Memphis as coin toss type game, 50-50. The official pick, based off how I coded it into the system, the official pick is going to be on the money line plus 225. I'm seeing 6.5. If it had gotten to 7, the model would then flip and make 7 the. That's just arbitrary coding, folks. Again, this is similar to how we talked about some of these other games. You have to figure out for you what makes the most sense. If it's this number, how you play it. For us, it's a lot of times the touchdown. That's why I coded in that way. Because, Jared, is this a game where even though it's not a touchdown, you might like a little bit of the 6.5 in your back pocket? Are you splitting? Do you like money line? I don't know what there is to say about Florida State other than they've really struggled. Memphis can put up points. So we know we're on Memphis. We know we're fading Florida State. How's the best way to do it in your opinion?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this earlier today how the type of plays that we make have changed so much over the past few years. And I feel like this is a great example of this. A couple of years ago, I would have said, why would you ever not take the points? And now I'm completely flipped, especially if it's less than a touchdown. Like I almost don't even think about it anymore. There'll be one exception. There's always a few exceptions. We'll talk about one of those exceptions later. But this is one where nope, don't care about the points. Give me the money line. For number one, the payout feels great, of course, and also and when you lose, it's like, hey, look, I made the right decision there. I lost less by playing it on the money line. So it's almost now outside of very specific circumstances, I just always go for the money line. Don't care about the points. And I mean, honestly, like, in my opinion, Florida State plays like they've been playing. Okay, great odds, great opportunity for Memphis there to go in and get a win. And if Florida State plays better and they win by 14 points, then, who cares? So I really like taking the money line in this game.
And View, if you knew, we've done some different things with how we've scaled our picks in the past. We've gone to a little bit less money lines for various reasons. In both football and basketball. So we don't really have this set up as much. It's more kind of just your standard one unit thing, so we don't confuse people. So the official pick will be 1 unit to win 2.2. But I think because what you're kind of mentioning too is what we've done for a lot. What we kind of recommend to people too as well on your plus odds. Like you don't necessarily have to put a full unit on something like this because the payout's so big. You can put maybe 3/4 of a unit, even half a unit would win you still more than a unit. So when you think about your normal unit size bet and you're risking 1.1 units to win 1, if you just put a half a unit on this one, you're still going to win more than you would on a normal bet. As you said, because Jared, if you lose, then you only lost half, or you can put the full unit on it and then you've won 2 bets worth, right? So I mean, you've got a lot of different ways you can play this. It's all personal preference. There's no magic formula. And sometimes you do look at the games and say, based off of this situation or this, it makes sense to do one thing or the other. Viewer, I think, just to elaborate on what Cousin Jared said there about the money line, is that sometimes it just makes a lot of sense to stay away from minus odds, stay into plus odds. Sports are weird. And it's not to say there's always value on plus odds, but if you have a game with value, sometimes those plus odds or just laying points rather than the money line can end up being a better situation. Iowa State's a great example last week. It's not always going to play out like that. We laid the 2.5. You would have laid the 3, whatever. You lose less than if you played the money line and we're thinking, oh, it's a close game and I don't, I want to lay the money line or whatever. You lose more that way. So in the long run, sometimes it's just better odds can be better. And I think it's kind of what you're trying to say. It doesn't mean always do that, right? It just means something to kind of consider in your own strategy. But we're playing Memphis there at Florida State. Another early game, LSU and South Carolina. LSU, wasn't really convincing last week, but they did come off of playing a game on Sunday night. So a short week, had a nobody, definitely a trap game with a conference game the next week after coming off of the big game in Vegas for USC. Now they'll travel to South Carolina, who is, flying high after a thumping of Kentucky. I first want to talk about Kentucky because I don't think we're talking about them later in the show. Kentucky, South Carolina, we didn't cover this at the start. What is your take on that game? Was that about South Carolina's decent? Was that Kentucky may not be worth anything? Is that just weird? We kind of said we had no idea what would happen, and sure enough, something weird happened. What's your thought on that?
Man, I have a track record of being right on Kentucky. And so I feel a lot of
years
weight.
Now, it seems like.
I feel like I have a lot of weight in what my words are saying. And to be honest with you, I did not have a feeling. The first time in a while, I haven't had a feeling about Kentucky coming into the season. I know that this is, people are going to say that this is like hyperbolic and it's just because my team was involved. But was there a reason that Mark Stoops was trying to get out of Kentucky after last season? Did he see the writing on the wall that this next season was going to be pretty rough? I don't think that's the case. I mean, he wins 7 games, he gets an automatic year added to his contract. I mean, what more could you ask for? But I think Kentucky might be in a tough spot this year. And I mean, the schedule doesn't do them any favors, especially this week. Like, I don't know how much confidence they're going to be able to build over the course of the season either. So I think this is a relative to recent Kentucky teams. This one is probably near the bottom. And I think that's just kind of is what it is for this year. I don't think it's going to be able to be something that's going to be fixed this year.
I'd kind of forgotten about that Stoops to A&M thing and how that was so weird. I kind of forgot about it. I was like, oh yeah, that was really crazy. Yeah. And I think that kind of then lends into your analysis of this, that maybe let's not overreact to South Carolina in that game. Their defense played great, obviously, but Kentucky's offense has been known to be a little bit questionable at times. Let's not overreact to anything with LSU. They played USC, really well and could have won that game. And USC last week just went up and beat Utah State, who's not like, a Division III school. They just beat them, 100-0 or something like that. Yep. So LSU probably still a pretty good team. Let's not overreact to anything. Model says LSU by 11. And I think your words to me when we were texting about this was like, at the start of the season, wouldn't this been around 10? And I'm like, well, the model still says 11. And so we're kind of like, hey, well, at that point, let's lay the 7. It's a B grade pick according to the model.
Yeah. And so that's my main thing here. Like, I think this is an overreaction to South Carolina blowing out Kentucky and LSU playing a closer game than what it should have been against Nicholls State. But I think if you go and look at USC last week against Utah State, like, this USC defense may have really turned a corner, because pitching a shutout against Utah State, not necessarily anything to write home about, but those are the types of teams the past few seasons. USC was still giving up 21, 28 points.
Yeah, they would, in the past, they would have won that game, 62-35 or something. And you were like,
yeah.
And you wake up and see that score the next morning and be like, well, that's weird.
Yeah. And so I think USC's defense may really be improved. I don't think that you need to hold that for now. I don't think you need to hold that offensive performance against USC earlier this year over LSU's head. And then, would I have told you to put money on Nicholls State last week? No, of course not. But an easy hangover spot for LSU there. So I think this is just an overreaction. I think there's too much value here when Sideline says that this should be 11. I will say, though, that like 7 is the number. Like, for me, I'm not laying 7.5. Not one I'm necessarily looking to invest a lot of money on the money line. It's 7. Like, that's it. I'm not going past 7 with LSU.
And Nicholls is a pretty good team. Top 25 ranking right now. That's their Super Bowl and playing LSU, in-state rival. Yep. And again, we mentioned trap game for LSU. Fun fact on Nicholls, and Cousin Jared, I'm going to say this now, and we are at the 52-minute mark of the show, and I think it's going to hopefully reverberate and confuse everybody for the rest of the show. Last year, Nicholls won the Southern Conference with a 7-0 record, and their overall record, according to Wikipedia, was 6-5. And so, I don't know. Math is
it's hard,
wrong or confusing. I don't know how to do that. Yeah. Boston College and Missouri, kind of an early game, 12:45 Eastern kick. B grade pick on the under. We're going under 54. Obviously, 55 is the key. That's where it would get an A grade at 55. Projections around 50. We talk about this a lot. So two things. This is only B grade. This might be my favorite B grade of the week. We talk about this a lot. We want to think about key numbers, but remember at the start of the show where I said pace matters, but it's only part of it. Key numbers matter, but it's only part of it. A couple of years ago, I think we had, and we try to talk about this every so often, a situation where it's like, hey, we're going to lay the 8 because this should be like 17. And people are worried about, it's missing the key number of 7. And it's like, yeah, but really the key number is like 10, 13, 14. Right? Yeah. So you're getting the key numbers you actually need, and don't worry about the one that's on the other side of it. I think that's this one. Like, don't worry about 55. If you can get it, hallelujah. But like, I don't think that matters. The keys here that matter are 51, 52. Honestly, things in the 40s. Missouri's defense looked really good last week. I don't see how Boston College moves the ball quickly. And we saw Boston College against Florida State move the ball very slowly. So, I mean, when you see that sort of pace, Missouri's defense, Missouri having no big plays this year, just slow and steady down the field, I'm not sure how there are that many points in this game unless there are turnovers, weird plays, etc. Stuff like that happens. There's no such thing as a sure thing in in sports, right? Of course, but a B grade under 54. But I think this is way too high. I kind of think this is going to play out maybe in the 30s or low 40s. I just don't see a lot of points. Cousin Jared, what is your take?
I want to believe in Boston College. Like, I really want to be like, look, our boy Bill O'Brien is back.
Has anybody ever uttered those words?
Where he's from. This is a homecoming. He knows the area. He spent so much time with the Patriots up there in Massachusetts. Boston College is great fit, great scheme for the players that he can recruit. What if Florida State's just trash? What if that's it? And I think even a lot of the time that Missouri has been in the SEC, they haven't gotten enough credit for how good their defense has played. And this Missouri defense is pretty salty. Yeah. And I do not think I have a high level of confidence that Boston College is not going to be able to move the ball against Missouri the way that they did against Florida State. And even if they do have some level, even if they are able to move the ball to some level against Missouri, Boston College was chewing a lot of clock. We talk about Bill O'Brien being an NFL guy. It's going to be if they move the ball, it's going to be an NFL drive. It's going to be one of those 8-minute drives because they aren't going to be able to do it quickly. So if it happens, it's going to be slow. There was one drive in that Boston College Florida State game that was like I felt like I was watching Academy. It was
the whole quarter.
Yeah, it took almost the whole quarter. So I think this has all the ingredients to be a low scoring game, and this is one that's only a B grade from sideline, but I think the way these two teams have played, it's still one that's worth an investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Missouri's offense, right, number 11, of course. And again, I would be remiss again to not. I said it earlier, but I want to make sure I don't bury the lead. Number 11 because they're so efficient, but they have not scored quickly. They have taken a long time to score. They have been really efficient. They have marched the ball down the field, but they aren't scoring, on 3-play drives. That's not been what's happened this year so far, at least. And Boston College has a decent enough defense. Again, maybe they look a little better because Florida State maybe isn't that good. We don't know. And again, part of that, and DJU has been a little bit of a disappointment. Part of it's been his receivers have dropped a lot of passes. Yeah. And so it's not all on him. Part of it's been his line too, but that's the whole thing. Is the whole team offensively hasn't been very good. But again, I think Missouri will score absolutely. But if they've been doing it slow, just a lot of slow things happening. This is priced as if we're going to have a, average number of points for a college football game, and nothing about this screams average number of points. Everything screams below average. This is only a B grade, but one I absolutely love. To the middle set of games, Texas A&M and Florida, a game we're going to go over 46.5. Models thinks low 50s, your key in this area, 47, probably 48, maybe. So we're on the right side of that A grade pick. Because Jared, this is your team here, so I'll let you have the floor.
Florida's defense, I don't think is very good. That is about all that this amounts to.
It does feel like Miami just scored another touchdown on them,
Yes, it does feel like Miami just scored another touchdown on them, and I think A&M. I don't want to overreact to the Notre Dame game. But what I can say is Notre Dame's entire defense, like their defensive front. Oh my gosh, Notre Dame was blowing up some of the A&M running plays. Their defensive line was doing such a great job. Good coverage in the secondary. Florida has none of that, and so I think that A&M is going to be able to move the ball on the ground, be efficient through the air. And I think A&M is going to get close to, I don't know, mid 20s, upper 20s in points. Florida, they said they're going to split time between the quarterbacks this week, between Mertz and DJ Lagway.
Mertz does have an injury as well, so there is that.
He does have an injury, but they have said they're going to split time. It's because they don't want A&M to know who is going to play. I would be okay. Billy Napier is going to get fired. Like it doesn't matter. But if you
heard it here, folks.
But if he wants to be fired after this game instead of 6 weeks from now, play Graham Mertz the whole game. And that is, we like to talk about scenarios where this game doesn't go over. It's because he plays Graham Mertz all the time. And I'm not saying that like Graham Mertz is the problem. Like
Mertz has been fine.
Yeah. Like, Florida has lots of other problems besides Graham Mertz. He's not the biggest one, but because of those deficiencies elsewhere, like you need to have the playmaking ability of Lagway, just like the pure talent that he had. Like nobody would question he has more pure talent than Graham Mertz does. Like you have to put Lagway out there and just hope that he finds some magic to score some points. Because Florida just hasn't been as consistent with Mertz there and with all the other parts and pieces around him. So those reasons, Florida quarterback play, of course, but I think mostly Florida's defense is not good. And I think A&M gets upper 20s, low 30s in this game.
Because, Jared, I feel like this show should be must-watch TV for anybody betting college football. I don't say that because I'm full of ourselves or anything like that, but because of moments like this that I just absolutely love when it happens. I don't know anything about DJ Lagway. Math. I mean, I watch a lot of college football, absolutely, but like I can't watch 132. Like I can't watch them all. Like I have an eye on like almost every baseball game most nights.
Yeah,
like, I don't even know who this guy is. You're talking about him, and I'm like,
well,
okay,
he's
what were you saying?
He grew up an hour north of Houston, so like that's the main reason that I know him.
But even then, and it's about splitting reps or whatever. And I'm like, I mean, Mertz has been fine. I go to sideline, I look at the ratings, and lo and behold, what do I see? Graham Mertz grade 103. Remember, we said hundreds average, so barely above average for college football. Again, he's been okay. I mean, he hasn't been great, but he hasn't been too terrible. Yeah. DJ Lagway, in his limited appearances, already a 117. That's a full standard deviation above average. That puts him in the same company as, Connor Wegman, who's a 116, KJ Jefferson, who's a 115, Grayson McCall, who's a 117, Will Rogers, a 114. Not the top at the top, but guys who are pretty solid quarterbacks. So I just love when this happens, when you can watch something, know something. I pull up what the rating is, and it's like, oh, that absolutely backs up exactly what he was saying right there.
Yeah, and again, like make sure that Billy Napier has that information in case he doesn't want to lose his job.
I mean, maybe he does. I mean, some of these buyouts, like I would just love to get fired, and people could talk about me on SportsCenter all they want and badmouth me, and I just be out on a beach somewhere laughing and smiling. All right, so we're going to go over in that one. We're also going to go over in Oregon State. Obviously here, Oregon State, Washington State, both playing this week. I love that. Hopefully it keeps going. We definitely need these games. Again, we talked about Oregon. We think they're fine offensively. They still look good. Oregon State looked pretty solid last week. How much of that San Diego State? Obviously, they've got a little bit of a rebuild, but the model still thinks Oregon State's decent enough in this one to, maybe keep this a little bit closer than the experts think. But instead of taking a side, we're going to go over 50. Model thinks 53.8. So we're thinking, the benefit here is we think this should be around 55. That's the most key number in college football, but 51, 52, 55 wins on all three of them. B grade pick on the over. I kind of feel like Oregon, after playing Boise State last week in that sort of game, I look at Oregon State this week and I think they can do all those same things. This isn't the Oregon State, from a few years ago that had no offense and just fantastic defense. The model thinks their offense is better than their defense. This feels like a game where Oregon can put up points. Oregon give up points just like they did last week. Seems like we can get maybe even into the 60s in this one. Obviously, it means a lot to Oregon State, so who knows what's going to happen with regards to the margin of victory in this one, but we think there should be more points than the sports books expect. Cousin Jared, what's your take?
I don't know if I'm as high on you on the number of points in this game, but what I would say is I think there's like two outcomes to this game. I think Oregon wins it like 28-24, so that gets us over this number. Or I think Oregon wins this game 52-7, which gets us over that number. I don't know which of those two it's going to be, but if Oregon keeps this close, they're going to have to score points. If Oregon State's going to keep this close, they have to score points. I think they have to get into at least the low 20s. So I think either of those things happen. I think this game gets into like the mid 50s. I think it's a solid play. Anytime that you can get below all those key numbers in the 50s, it's a smart one.
Yeah, and I'm with you. The ways it doesn't go over, I think, it's going to just – and again, anything could happen, but like the likely scenarios, right? The likely blowout scenario for Oregon likely gets it over because it means they probably put up at least mid-40s.
Yep.
Oregon State can probably score at least a touchdown, right? But, 45-3 is the way it doesn't go over, I guess. But, that seems kind of, again, at the tail end of the distribution for a blowout. The close scenario, 28-21 doesn't get you there. But, again, it seems like in either one of those scenarios, Oregon's either going to run away, get a lot of points. Oregon State's got to score some points. It feels like we should be able to get at least into the 50s here. So it makes a lot of sense, in our opinion, to go over. We talked about Pitt and their frenetic pace earlier. They're hosting West Virginia in a rivalry game that thankfully has been revived after missing several years there. We're going to take West Virginia -2. It's an A-grade pick. The model says they win by an average of 10.5. Because, Jared, the model is really sold on this West Virginia offense, led by a very, maybe not, hyped, not a, flashy quarterback, but a very consistently solid quarterback. We aren't really sold on this Pittsburgh offense. Why is the offense bad? Well, because they're going pretty fast, and they're not really scoring as many points as you would think from that crazy pace. And so that makes the offense take a little bit of a hit here. We think West Virginia is the far better team. Obviously, road rivalry stuff gets weird. This one, though, I know the model says 10, but at least if this was West Virginia -4.5, I'd be like, ooh, that's a little bit tougher on the road in a rivalry game. I mean, we probably should play it, but I don't love it as much. But under a field goal seems a bit crazy. I don't really think this Pittsburgh team has turned really any corner yet. What's your take on this one?
Yeah, I can't get over. I watched a lot of the Pittsburgh Cincinnati game. I've learned that I can complete most of my fatherly duties early in the morning, and then by 11. So I miss college game day and stuff, unfortunately, but by 11 I can be in front of the TV and I'm good for maybe the first window and a half. And then people start getting needy again. And so then I'm more in and out. Yeah. I'm more in and out after that, but first window, perfect viewing, got a lot of viewing time, watched a lot of this game. I was shocked. The offensive creativity that I was seeing from Pitt on that first drive was oh my gosh, is this Pitt? Am I watching the right game? And then as the game went on, I was there's Pitt. They're going fast, but nothing's changed.
It happened in week 1 as well. Both games, they've come out on that first drive and been oh my gosh, what are they doing? They're just moving it up and down, and it's creative and stretching the field and then it's slowly by slowly, it's the scripted stuff's working well. Once it gets unscripted.
Yep, exactly. And so I just don't have any confidence at all in Pittsburgh's offensive efficiency. And I think if you look at where this number is at, there is just a lot of respect for this rivalry and people wanting it to be a close game. Could be a close game, but I think there's just too much value here laying a short number with a West Virginia team that is just better every single way you slice and dice it, even on the road. It's not like Pitt is an intimidating place to play. When the Steelers are there, when it's just the Pittsburgh Panthers, not as much. And so I just think that West Virginia is head and shoulders better than Pittsburgh. Doesn't mean it won't happen in one game, but laying a short number like this, I think, is excellent value.
Yeah, absolutely. Garrett Green, ranked number 23 according to Sideline. Again, and it's not because of the flashiness. It's just a very solidly consistent, turned into a very,
good college quarterback.
Yeah, good college quarterback. This number's out to 3 already. So folks, just as a reminder, if you were with us on Dub Club, you already saw that we love this number. You got the projections early. You got the official pick of -2 from us. You've already locked in a number better than a field goal. So again, just a reminder of benefits on Dub Club. By the time we recorded the show, 24 hours after we sent out the official picks, it's already out to 3. Still wouldn't play the 3 in a heartbeat.
Still would play the 3. Yep.
Yeah. So once it gets above that, it gets a little bit, probably, but now you're scaling back or whatever, but still at 3. So still at 3, we love it. We just, again, if you're with us on Dub Club and it does land at 3, then you get the win versus a push. So still worth the investment, but again, a lot of reasons to be over on Dub Club. We get a lot of benefits. Again, free trials, so check it out if you have not yet. Notre Dame and Purdue. I have a take. We didn't talk about Notre Dame. That upset because I knew we were going to talk about this game.
Yeah.
My take on it is, and you kind of talked about it against A&M. I think Notre Dame's defense is really good. I think their offense isn't. I think the model is a little bit not high enough on their defense, but not low enough on the offense. I think it's kind of needs to go a little bit more extreme with Notre Dame here so far. I'm not sure they're a great team at this point, but I think they're going to be able to have a good enough defense. And when their offense doesn't show up, they're going to play those low scoring games and maybe lose to a team like Northern Illinois. Mm-hmm. Purdue, I think, is much improved. Coming into the season, Purdue was like questionably a top 100 team in college football, which is, bad because there's only 130 or whatever. They've looked pretty solid so far. I think Purdue could hang in. I'm not sure how many points are going to happen in this game. We're going to take the 10.5 with Purdue. This was up 11.5. And again, if you got the projections, if you're with us on Dub Club and you saw that we had this at Notre Dame by 7, so you could have jumped on the 11.5. You could have jumped on the 11, even at 10.5. I think it makes sense. A grade pick still. Because Jared, what do you have for us?
I have. For those that are, just curious, Sideline has an A grade on the over 46 in this game. Yeah, hard pass on that. Do not trust Notre Dame's.
Which goes back to what I said. I think that the model's too high on the offense and not high enough on the defense for this one, which would bring that projection down.
Yep. And so staying away from that one, I just not that I don't think Notre Dame's not going to be fine, but the emotion from that first game on the road against A&M took a lot out of them. Yeah. Like that game, like I had anxiety. Maybe it's not fair because, obviously I want Notre Dame to look good this season now after they beat A&M. But like I felt the anxiety of the Notre Dame fans, like losing a game like that. I vividly remember, here's another reason why you need to come to this show. The first weekend of college football in 2008, it was my first game as a student at Texas A&M. And it's like, we were playing Arkansas State. This is going to be great. My introduction, I'd been to games at Kyle Field before, but first I'm sitting in the student section, all of that stuff. And we lost to Arkansas State in my first game of the Mike Sherman era. In College Station.
I forget that one happened.
Yeah.
I'm sure you want to as well.
I don't. But like just the anxiety, like I empathized with Notre Dame. Like that is a gut wrenching way to lose. And like your confidence is rattled after that. Notre Dame could do it. They're a good team, but it's going to take a lot for them to kind of pull themselves together and give an unbelievable effort. Not unbelievable effort, but like just come together and play really, really well. Going back on the road to an in-state rival, a team that, has every time they circle Notre Dame, they have that game circled. So I just think that Notre Dame's going to win this game. They could win it by 10. They could win it by 7. They could win it by 6. I just think it's going to be really tough for them to go on the road and blow out Purdue with what they've been through the past couple of weeks and what we've seen from their offense in the past couple of weeks.
You mentioned that, and I wasn't a student there. I was long gone. I just think back to 2017 when Baylor lost to Liberty. Before Liberty was Liberty. This was back when Liberty was still FCS. In a season, Liberty went 6-5 and had Turner Gill as the head coach. So this was not a good Liberty school, and Baylor lost him. And of course, I think the worst one ever. And this, I do not think can be topped. I don't think there's any game film of this out there, which is crazy to think about. But Baylor UNLV, I believe the year was 1991, when Baylor at home had the lead inside a minute and could kneel the ball and ran a play because they wanted to score a touchdown inside the 10 because it was about sending the right message for the season. I think it was the first game of the season. Running back fumbles, UNLV picks it up for a 99-yard touchdown return the other way, and Baylor loses. I don't know how that can ever be topped. And so I don't know if there is game film of that or not. I know it's not good.
Yeah. And if I had participated in that game, I would also be trying to hide all the game film.
Absolutely right. That's why it's probably trying to destroy. Anyway, we're going to take the points with Purdue, and I'm like you. I don't think Notre Dame's like terrible. I think they'll be kind of okay. It's just it's like coming back this next week against an improved Purdue team. Like this could be probably a close game, and Notre Dame's just going to be happy to get out alive. Of note, of course, Purdue's home field advantage will be mitigated somewhat. There will be a decent number of Notre Dame fans in the arena because it will be a close game, but I think there's a little bit of optimism around Purdue now, and after last week, there might not be a lot of optimism around Notre Dame. So maybe not quite as much as it would have been if Purdue had started off as bad as we projected, and Notre Dame was, a top 10 team at this point, which they're not. App State, East Carolina. I mean, we're going to back App State here. We're going to lay the 2.5. I think laying 2.5 makes a lot of sense. Model says 6.8. Under a field goal, maybe laying a field goal would be fine. I see this number is still readily available. To me, this is about. I don't think East Carolina has an offense at all. And I would have said Clemson isn't either, but I don't know, maybe. And as much as we dog on Clemson's offense, I do think Clemson would score if they were playing in the American, right? They have athletes. This is about App State. Their defense is bad, but after getting embarrassed like that, this feels like a good week of practice. Get things right on defense. Their offense isn't a problem. And if App State can't win by more than a field goal on this one, this might be we just have to be done with them type thing. Yeah. So It feels like a good spot, good bounce back, good buy low. I love me a good buy low spot. I always want to buy when people are selling and sell when people are buying. That's the way to play any market. So we're going to buy low on App State. Lay the 2.5 B grade pick. Cousin Jared, after last week, I know this is a little bit scary, but I know you like this one as well. Tell us why.
Yeah, I feel I said a lot of what I wanted to say when we were talking about Clemson. What happened with App State there was it would be hard for that to be repeated. It was what's the technical term for that? Cluster something another? I don't know. Isn't there a term cluster something when a bunch of random events all happen together? Anyway, I don't know. But you get the idea. App State is not that bad defensively, and East Carolina, even if App State was pretty bad defensively, East Carolina is not necessarily the team that's going to take advantage of that deficiency from App State. So I like App State in this one. Short number, similar to what we said with West Virginia. 3 is I'm good laying 3. When it gets past 3, I have a few more questions, but right now still available out there at 2.5.
App State still had 5.2 yards per play against a really good Clemson defense. So the offense isn't a problem.
No.
And East Carolina's defense is their strength, but it's still nowhere near as good as Clemson. So a good bounce back, a good little, hey, we got our tails handed to us by a really good team, and now let's go back and get back to business of trying to right the ship here. So buy low here, -2.5 on App State. Last one before we get to the night games, at least for Eastern, UAB and Arkansas. We completely missed the UAB over. We really liked that one last week. Of note, that game had 4 field goals in the first half. I feel like that could have gone a very different way. Those field goals were close field goals. The teams drove deep and just couldn't quite put in the end zone. That sort of thing happens. UL Monroe, I don't know. Are they not super terrible now? They put up a lot of points on UAB. Really, UAB's defense got caught with their pants down, really. Arkansas is going to score however many points they want. I know maybe a little bit of a hangover for Arkansas after last week, playing the extra snaps against a top team, double overtime, disappointment, not being able to quite pull it out. But Arkansas should be able to take out all those frustrations and score as much as they want on UAB. UAB still plays fast. Arkansas still plays fast. And I expect UAB to come out offensively. And I know that UAB did not have a lot of success against UL Monroe's defense, which is definitely worse than Arkansas's. I'm not would argue that. But remember, we talk about one game weird things happen, and I'm not saying UAB is going to put up 40, but I think they're going to be able to, score a little bit, move the ball a little bit with all the possessions that should happen. They're going to score accidentally and score more on Arkansas than they did UL Monroe, not because of the fact that UL Monroe's defense is better than Arkansas's, but because that's just random variance, just stuff happens. And so we're going to go over 60 in this one. It is a B grade pick, really over 59, maybe 58. That's when it starts getting a little bit more exciting. But the bottom is 63.5. So we're thinking, low mid 60s makes more sense. So we're getting value here at 60. B grade over. Cousin Jared, where is it an A grade in your mind? Is it 59, 58.5, 58? What's the number where you would get even more excited?
58 is definitely the number where I would get more excited about it. But like I said, still like it here. That we talk a lot about not overreacting to, Clemson. Don't overreact to Clemson. Not overreacting also applies to bad teams or teams that are lower tier. That UAB game against UL Monroe was such an outlier from everything that UAB has done the past couple of seasons that I am not going to let it deter.
On offense, the defense was about right.
Yeah. No, that
didn't get all those points UL Monroe. Absolutely.
Yeah, that part checks out. The offense is the part that doesn't check out there. And to your point, just one or two of those short field goals turning into touchdowns, it just makes all of the difference. And I that hurts for Arkansas. Like a coach that is on the hot seat the way that Sam Pittman is, that loss is a tough one to swallow. But Sam Pittman, I don't think is the type of coach that a lot of teams should be worried about a hangover in this spot. UAB is the perfect bounce back team for this because you are going to be able to go through their defense like a hot knife through butter. And if UAB puts up some points on you, all the better for us. So I really like this one. I don't think there's going to be too much longer in the season where there will be value on the UAB overs. And so I think we've got to grab them while we can.
If, and again, anything can happen, right? But if UAB season plays out like it did last year, and they're still kind of that same team, which we think they mostly are, there's going to be a game that has 80 or 90 points in it. And I'm not sure it would be this one necessarily, because for that to happen, I think UAB would have to score 30 or something, which seems unlikely. But it's coming, folks. I feel like it's coming where there's going to be a game where they're going to play some, a Florida Atlantic, Florida International, or whoever they play. You're right. And it's going to be a game of like 80 or 90 points. And we're going to be like, over 68. Yeah, probably. We're not going to do it. And it'll get over by the third quarter. We'll be like, we should have just done it. We should have just played it. So a little foreshadowing for you people. To the night games, UTEP and Liberty. This one is at 6 p.m. Eastern. We're going to lay the 23 with Liberty. They just look good, and UTEP doesn't.
No, UTEP looks bad.
UTEP struggled last week against Colorado School of Mines. I don't know who they played. It was somebody bad.
Yeah.
UTEP had guys hurt. We talked about this against Nebraska, that their strategy made no sense, that they wanted to play fast, and there were more possessions, and guys got hurt. And I'm not sure the model can even capture really them having guys injured and losing depth is bad. And against a team that runs the ball like Liberty, like what Nebraska did to UTEP, Liberty's going to do to them. Like they're just going to pound and pound and pound. And by the end of the game, it's going to be 10-yard run after 10-yard run. Heck, maybe early on. We've got Liberty by 26.5. A grade play on Liberty minus 23. I just think they're gonna score every time they touch the ball at this point.
Yeah.
On this UTEP defense.
Yeah. So UTEP lost at home 27-24 to Southern Utah. I'm gonna go with the Screaming Eagles.
Are they the Thunderbirds?
Thunderbirds, yeah. Screaming Eagle, Thunderbirds.
We're in the right. We're on the same vein. Yeah, a team we've backed them a little bit in college basketball.
Yeah. Very, very familiar. Over
Thunderbirds,
Southern Utah in the Southern Utah game.
Great nickname.
Southern Utah in that game had 21 first downs, 268 rushing yards.
Yeah. Liberty's going to run for like 450.
Yeah,
maybe 500.
This is not a good sign for the Miners. Because if there is a coach that's going to be able to exploit you on the ground, it is Jamie Chadwell. And so I love this matchup for Liberty. Not a huge fan of laying this many points, but Liberty could feasibly cover this line at halftime. Will that mean they cover it for the full game? I don't know. But that is on the table that they cover this number by halftime.
Yeah, absolutely. This feels a lot like the Rutgers game that we had last week. We had an pick in the early slot. We laid the 23. And we were like, I don't think people realize like the discrepancy between these two teams and the fact that Rutgers is just going to run it down their throat all game long. And that's what happened. Rutgers then kept running it and kept scoring in the third and fourth quarter because it was, even if you put your backups in, it's just handoff and you're still getting 8 yards a pop. You're going to keep scoring. And that's what Liberty's going to do, I feel like, in this game. It's just going to be score. And it's going to take something weird for UTEP to hang in there in this one. Love laying the points here with Liberty. Also going to lay the points with Ole Miss on the road at Wake Forest. Hank Bachmeier, I feel like, that guy's well-traveled at this point, just making his way slowly across the country.
Yeah, very.
And here's the thing, though, about this one. Here's why I like this one. We're going to lay the 24 with Ole Miss. We don't love laying points like this. We try not to do it too often. A-grade pick from the model, which says it should be about 30. But here's what I like about this. We've got Ole Miss at number 4. I'm not sure people realize that there's a good chance that Ole Miss shouldn't be part of that top tier of college football teams. At this point, it does appear like Georgia is the number 1. And then, beyond that, I think it's kind of that, is it Texas? Is it Ohio State? Is it Alabama? But I really think you should be throwing Ole Miss into that conversation. And I'm not sure everyone quite realizes that. And I think that's why there's a little bit of value here, is that until people really start putting Ole Miss in that category, there might be a little bit of value on them here. On top of that, look at the pace of both of these teams. We're expecting a lot of possessions. That makes it easier to cover a big number like this. Minus 24 for Ole Miss, another big number, but we're laying it again. Cousin Jared, tell us your take as to why.
So I heard somebody say before the season, I think it was on SEC Network, maybe. It's before the first game, that they said that Jackson Dart was their dark horse to win the Heisman because this Ole Miss offense was going to be a pass-first offense for maybe the first time since Lane Kiffin has been there. And I was just thinking, this sounds like just, some guy on SEC Network talking. And then they played, take it with a grain of salt. They played Furman in Middle Tennessee. But Jackson Dart threw for 418 yards and then 377 yards. Of course, not playing in a lot of the second half of either of those games. I think there are very few coaches that I think keep up with sports betting or what the line is on their games or anything like that. That's the furthest thing from their mind. Lane Kiffin doesn't fall into that category. I genuinely believe Lane Kiffin is aware of what the line is on every single one of these games. That is the only reason that we have won backing Ole Miss at certain times in over the span of the show. I say that 50% in jest. But I think Ole Miss is not going to let their foot up off the accelerator, in the nicest possible way. I have no idea how we've come around to most people like Lane Kiffin, but that is just who Lane Kiffin is, and he's not going to let up. They're going to keep scoring. That's what they did last week against Middle Tennessee State. It's what they did against Furman the week before that. Doesn't matter who they're playing. They're not going to let up. I think Jackson Dart's going to have a big game, and there's going to be lots of points from Ole Miss.
And it's I have a couple things to say. Number one, about the spread thing. I don't think there's anything. We're not trying to say anything facetious is happening. No. But it does almost seem like it's he knows going in. He knows, hey, we're favored by 24. We're going to win by 40.
Yeah.
We want to prove them we're better than that, And then as the game goes on, if it's close, he's like, we need to prove that we're better. It's like a proof thing. We're going to show them. It's kind of the way I interpret it. But my goodness, this Ole Miss offense. First off, you talk about Jackson Dart, Heisman candidate, and now I would be remiss if I did not say the person who deserves to win it is on Colorado, because what Travis Hunter's doing is insane. And it's not just that he's playing both; he's doing it at Shohei Ohtani levels. He's been really good. You aren't passing on him for the most part. You're attacking wherever he's not when he's on defense, and he's grading out as their best offensive player as a wide receiver. It is incredible.
Yep.
That said, he probably won't win the Heisman. He's got a chance, I guess, but it's unlikely because quarterbacks always win it. Jackson Dart, according to Sideline, top-rated quarterback. Wide receiver crew for Ole Miss, top-rated wide receiver crew, according to Sideline. Running back, number 2. Offensive line pass blocking, number 5. Offensive line run blocking, number 2. Just insanity. They let their star running back go because they were like, we don't need to pay him all this money because we want to pay other people money because we've got all this other talent we can do with. And that's the thing people were always talking about with the NIL. They're like, oh, now it's just going to be blah, blah, blah. There is a cap. There is a limited amount of money that people are going to spend on this stuff. And Ole Miss ran into it. All teams are running into it. Gundy talked about it, where he was like, why did we get this guy? He's like, well, he was cheap. At some point, every team has we only have so much money we can spend. And, people who thought, were doom and gloom or whatever, it's you see a team like Ole Miss saying, here's how we smartly spend our money on this, this, and this. And it's turned out to be some really good decisions. Obviously, they lost a really talented player, but when you only have so much money, you have to make some tough decisions. And they have a really good offense. Jackson Dart's been incredible. And a lot of possessions, a lot of points from Ole Miss. We're going to lay the 24. Moving on to Hawaii and Sam Houston. Both of these teams were really good to us in week 1. Taking the points, sprinkled on the money line with Hawaii, didn't quite get there. I personally played Sam Houston money line a little bit heavier, and it did. They're playing each other here. Hawaii off last week, getting to travel to the mainland. Historically, it's not done well in the mainland. The model has that input in there. It gives a massive penalty to Hawaii. So that has been baked in. The fact that they were off last week, I have to wonder if that helps any on this travel to the mainland. Obviously, that doesn't mean they're necessarily going earlier because they still have classes to attend. So, I mean, that's not like that. But I just wonder if that helps a little bit on this. We've got this at basically a pick'em, even though Hawaii is getting a massive penalty in the model for traveling to the mainland, where they get a big boost of teams coming there. That penalty applied here. Still think this is pretty close to even. Hawaii's the better team, but on the road, don't really know what's going to happen. We're going to take the 5.5 points with Hawaii, maybe sprinkle on the money line at plus odds. Sam Houston's a team that I know they looked really good in that first game against Rice, but when you look back at last season, played a lot of close games. This could easily be a close one. I believe in both of these teams. I like both of these teams. I think it's going to be a close game. So give me the points. Cousin Jared, what you got for us?
Yeah, so this was the game that I had in my mind where I was thinking that the points are kind of in no man's land. And so normally I would lean towards taking the money line. And if that is what you choose to do, I will not fault you for doing this. I have just seen Sam Houston play.
Sam Houston's involved.
Yeah. Like I have seen them play close games every possible way you could slice and dice it. And I just want this, like, you mentioned there's the math side of it, and then there's just what makes you be able to sleep at night. And taking the 5.5, even though it's an obscure number, will allow me to sleep at night with Sam Houston. This is one. There's a lot of them. Wouldn't think twice about it. Give me the money line. I would think twice about it. I'll take the points because I just think that both of these teams like playing weird games, and I think every point that you can get is valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything over 4, I think, is just too good to pass up here. And, I think the biggest thing that makes me confident about this pick is what Sam Houston did last week, and to get Hawaii, resting a little bit, maybe help versus Sam Houston coming off of a tough game against UCF. And obviously we expected UCF to win that game. UCF's the better team. I'm not really, breaking any news with regards to that, but the way that they lost that game, outgained in yards 554 to 286, rushing yards 384 to 67. I mean, UCF just dominated them. And that's, again, not to say that I don't think Sam Houston's, that they're terrible necessarily, but I think it is just a reminder that first game against Rice was more about Rice than it was about Sam Houston, and where we said, we didn't really see it with this Rice team. Kind of thought that was a little bit overrated. That was a big game for Sam Houston, a big rivalry game, a big, you talked about it. There'd be more Sam Houston fans of that game. I'm sure they'll be excited for this one as well. But I think that was just a come back to earth reminder that they're still a small school and they still don't have the most talent in the world. Neither does Hawaii. But this should be a really good game. And so, of course, Sam Houston could easily cover this. Anything can happen. Again, just your normal caveats. But in general, this could definitely be a close, tight game. And so getting any point you can. I mean, I'd love every point you can get here. If you can get 7.5, even better. I feel even better about that, right? But it's just one of those, like, getting 3, great. Getting 4, even better. Getting 6, even better. Getting 7, even better. Because Sam Houston, that Rice blowout was weird. A lot of their games have been close here lately. So we're going to grab the points with Hawaii. We're going to go under in Toledo and Mississippi State. Average projection here is in the upper 40s. We're going to go under 59.5. This is one that's interesting because both of these teams have been playing faster than their pace indicates, but they haven't really been scoring that much. And so this is one where the model is really saying, like, just be careful because the points haven't been as high as they should be. So a pretty big difference between what the model thinks, what we can get. Again, your key number here, 58, 59. So 59.5 gets you on the right side of all the key numbers in the 50s. Cousin Jared, what do you have for us?
Man, I have been surprised at the pace at which this Mississippi State team has played. I figured with Jeff Lebby going there, it would be basically the reincarnation of Ole Miss, just without everything that has been built up since Lane Kiffin has been there. I thought that was the type of offense they've played. And I mean, the first couple of games, I'm not taking too much from that, but I thought that we would at least see, I thought that we would see something similar to Pitt, where it's clear what they were trying to do and what level of success they would have in that first season. I don't know, but at least it was clear what they were trying to do. And I haven't quite seen that yet. So I have been surprised on that front. And I have to assume that is what is driving this total to be set where it's at. People expecting to see that, because what do you see here on your screen that makes you think you're going to get a game that ends up being a higher than average scoring game? I don't see it. So I've just been surprised. At some point, maybe we'll see that, but I haven't seen anything so far that would make me think that Mississippi State and Toledo are going to be able to get to that number of points.
Mississippi State, didn't run the ball well against Arizona State, didn't really try to run it that much. 24 rushing yards. And that has sacks in it, but I mean, my goodness.
Yeah. That's Colorado numbers.
Yeah. And that's kind of the old school Baylor, right? Where they were just, didn't feel like they could run the ball. So they just passed it a bunch. I think that this total is priced with the rules from 15 years ago, because back a long time ago, 10 years ago, I don't know exactly when the rules change happened, but there was a time when passing the ball that much led to even more stoppages in play. But now there are so many times where when you run those wide receiver outs and they run out of bounds, the clock starts 2 seconds later. Running out of bounds doesn't stop the clock anymore. And that's the biggest thing about passing is, yes, you have incompletes. We know that. But aside from that, you're more likely to be on the boundaries to get out of bounds. Wide receivers aren't bigger. They don't want to get hit. And so, running backs are in the middle of the field. You can't get out of bounds. Well, it doesn't really matter if you get out of bounds or not. The clock's still going to run. And so you end up with the couple of rule changes we've had over the last, not just the one last year, but before that, where it's passing isn't quite the same. We're going to have so many more possessions, so many more plays, so many more points as it was, a decade or whatever ago. And that's what this is priced because Mississippi State's still passing the ball a lot, but it's not, really leading to, what the scores were from back in the day. And so again, anything can happen. This could definitely go over, but I look at what happened last week against Arizona State. They came at 53 points. If this game had 53, that makes a lot of sense. Toledo scored, a decent number of points last week. That was against UMass. I don't really think that means a whole lot. Emu put up a ton of points on them, right? They put up a ton of points the first week against Duquesne. That's Duquesne. I mean, Mississippi State give up a lot of rushing yards to Arizona State, don't get me wrong. But their defense is still a whole lot better caliber than UMass and Duquesne. And Toledo's offense, I think, is really struggling without Finn, who was kind of that playmaker. And we'll talk about Baylor here shortly, but a guy like Finn in the MAC could do a lot, could overcome a lot. And that really helped Toledo score points. And without him, there's just more ways that this could stay low scoring than high scoring. I think so we're going to go under again. 59.5. Key numbers are 58 and 59. New Mexico and Auburn, we're going to go under 61. Model says more like 51, 52. I look at what happened with Auburn last week, and I think that sort of game is exactly what New Mexico is going to try to get them into. That low scoring, grind it out. New Mexico's better on offense and defense, absolutely. But if they're going to do anything, New Mexico, it's going to be on the ground. So I kind of think New Mexico's either not going to score, or if they do, it's going to be with, Dampier, the run option, that sort of thing. And that's going to take some time off the clock. And so obviously Auburn is a big favorite. They should win this game. But I'm just not sure the tempo is there to get up into the 60s. This feels like it could easily be, it's almost like the opposite of what we talked about earlier with the Oregon game. This could be 52-3, or it could be, 28-24. Well, both of those land you in the 50s. I think if New Mexico scores, I don't see how they're going to score fast, and then Auburn's going to score fast. That just doesn't seem right. I could be completely crazy. What do you have for us here?
I agree with everything you said. I think Bronco Mendenhall will come in with a good game plan here and try to contain that Auburn offense a little bit and keep the clock running, keep the ball out of their hands. You mentioned, I already forgot what the quarterback's name was for Dampier, but dual threat guy, quarterback runs, keep the chains moving, that kind of thing. I like the under in this game too. Like also, like this shouldn't be a letdown spot for Auburn, because considering they lost to New Mexico State last week, but 100%
Mexico State was last year.
Yeah, excuse me, last year, and then coming off the loss to Cal last week, they shouldn't be looking past New Mexico. They've seen what happens when they do that, but 100% could see Auburn coming out flat for the first quarter and a half of this game, and this being like 6-0 midway through the second quarter, and then we're feeling really great about this.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be a lovely place to be at. Auburn plays Arkansas next week at home. And so I'm not saying that they're looking ahead. Like you said, they should not be looking ahead. Absolutely. Yeah. But you do have to wonder if just put yourself in the player's shoes, right? If you're a player there and you are disappointed about Cal and you're thinking about saving your season, it might be a little bit hard to focus on New Mexico and more focus on the conference slate that's starting the next week and be thinking about, okay, well, how do we beat Arkansas? How do we beat, home game against Oklahoma? How do we beat, how do we turn things around starting with conference, right? Is kind of where your focus starts to shift to, because New Mexico is not very good and they should win this game easily. Yep. So yeah, a lot of ways that could go slow. The other thing to point out, and we talk about this all the time about smart coaches and game plans, knowing the situation. And I'm not trying to dog the UTEP coach, because I'm sure he has a method to his madness, but I just thought it was a little bit, not in their best interest to try to beat Nebraska by going fast in that sort of game. And like you said, you've got a good coach there at New Mexico and Bronco Mendenhall who really knows what he's doing. And you have to imagine he's sitting there going, if we try to make this up tempo and have a bunch of possessions, like eventually Auburn's athletes are going to score on our terrible defense, and we aren't going to really get much going because they have got a really good defense. And so that sort of game plan, playing keep away, that sort of thing, you have to think is in their best interest. And again, that leads more to under as well. So you're under 61.8 grade pick there. Another A grade. Taking the points with Air Force against Baylor. And of course, Finn being a really good quarterback, and mentioned that. I think my biggest thought on that is that's the type of guy who can have success in the MAC. In the Big 12, he's going to need more help around him. This Baylor offense is meh. The defense is meh. They're both okay. For the Big 12, they're bottom of the barrel because the Big 12 is so dang good. But Air Force defense is really good, and we saw it last week. They lost by 10. Is Baylor better than San Jose State? Probably.
Yeah.
Can Air Force play keep away and play good defense and lose by 10 here? Absolutely.
And frustrate the hell out of Baylor. Yes.
And that's exactly what they did 2 years ago when they played. Now, that was a little bit of a different story. That was one of my, rare, tell everyone put as much as you think you can on this game in that bowl game, because that was the rare combination of players who didn't really want to be there from Baylor playing in the cold, playing in their rival stadium, and Air Force being like, this is great. This is just feels like home. So that was a very unique situation. But, you see that pace from Air Force. We know the style of offense that they run. Baylor doesn't really have any incentive to run the score up, to try to win big. After last week playing a real physical game against Utah, they're thinking about just getting out of Dodge with a victory here. Could they front door cover late? Absolutely. We're taking 16.5. Would I rather have 17.5? Absolutely. But I think a 7, 10, 14 point victory is probably the most likely scenarios here. If you're optimistic for Baylor, there's an opportunity Air Force wins this game. Folks, anytime a triple option offense with a good defense goes up against a mediocre Power 5 school, there's a chance they win the game. Yeah. So I'm not saying Air Force does. Obviously, as a Baylor fan, I hope they don't. I don't think they do, but Air Force could absolutely hang around and make this game close. This line shouldn't be this big. I know Air Force struggled on offense, but with a triple option, you never know when their offense is going to show up. It's pretty high variance, which is what you want with the dog anyway. So we're going to take 16.5 with Air Force. Because Jared, I know you like this one as well. Tell us why.
You said it all there. I wish I would have been able to tee this game up and then just let you talk, because you kind of took everything.
I should have done that. I did that for you for the A&M game. I should have,
Well, it's Air Force. Like they will be able to deflate, take the air out of the ball, all that good stuff. And Baylor's defense has not shown me that, as of recent, that they would be able to stop that. I think this is going to be 3.5 yards, 3.5 yards, 3.5 yards first down. And Air Force is going to dominate the time of possession. Baylor may win this game by 10 points. But I think they are going to have to scratch and claw the entire 60 minutes of the game for them to win by 10 points. Air Force is just that annoying team that won't go away. And we're not talking about them this week, but maybe Navy's back to be in that team too. I think Temple's
we laid the 12 with them last week. I think I was also a lot about Temple being maybe the worst team in college football.
I think Temple is really bad, but I've seen stuff like offensively from Navy. Like you wouldn't think that they could still be innovating with like the flexbone triple option stuff, but some of the stuff I saw from Navy against Temple, don't ask why. I was watching that game, but they've done some interesting things. So I'm Air Force is definitely in that category. Army has been in that category as of recent too. And like, I think Navy may be kind of getting back there after a rough couple of years. Like, I think all the academy teams might be really good. They're pretty good this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. And honestly, the people who are with us at this point at the hour 45 mark are probably all already on Discord. But I will say, I think the answer to why you were watching that game was because someone had asked what our favorite picks were. And we said for the early slot, we said our favorite picks were Rutgers minus 23 and Army. And so I think that maybe you got into the Army game a little bit, and then your triple options juices were flowing. So then
America. I mean, how can you not pull for America?
That's true. Unless you live in another country. I know we have some viewers who are. And to each their own. UCF and TCU, a night game here, Big 12. Again, could be two really good Big 12 schools. Could be two teams that are like 6th and 7th. I mean, there's just such a hodgepodge mess there. The model's high on UCF, having them in the top 25. TCU only top 50. We've got UCF winning this 61% of the time. We're going to take even money on UCF. They're the road team, but we think they're better by a decent bit. KJ Jefferson, out of Arkansas and into UCF and into an offensive scheme that you feel like, with an offensive mastermind, you feel like can really take advantage of his strengths and make him even better. What's your take on the Golden Knights here going on the road? Can they get the win in Fort Worth?
I think that KJ Jefferson and Gus Malzahn are a match made in heaven. I think that this is the guy who's the offensive coordinator for Cam Newton. So like, you're never going to be able to say this is like the best quarterback that he's ever had, but maybe like, and Nick, blanking on his name, number 14, when they went to the national championship game in 2014, he was really good too, but he had some limitations as a passer, which, you don't have to be the best passer in a Gus Malzahn offense, but KJ Jefferson, I just think is so perfect for what he's doing. Hoover for TCU, like, still need to see a little bit more from him. So for me, this is like, I feel like UCF, which is like had this steady climb since Malzahn has gotten there, and TCU, which after the national championship has just kind of been middling, I would say. I like the coach QB combination more for UCF. So even that it's on the road, I like UCF. And even if the line had moved, let's say, I would like play this out to like UCF -3. That's my cutoff point here. I have a fairly high level of confidence in UCF here. Even if the line moves a little bit, let's still back UCF.
Yeah, and this is another one where we got the even money. We sent that out to everybody on Dub Club here about 24 hours ago. Right now, the best money line I'm seeing is -120, but you can lay 1.5 or 2. I'm with you. Anything under 3 makes too much sense to pass up here. Like I said, we're given the coach quarterback combination. We've got UCF by an average of about 4.5. So anything flipping through those key numbers of 3 and 4, again, makes a lot of sense here. I just think about, John Reese Plumlee, when he was there at UCF under Malzahn, some of these other quarterbacks that they've had there. It's seemingly like everybody for 1 year, but he is able to really just have success with that dual threat and make the quarterbacks who are passers and decent runners better runners and make the runners better passers. I mean, just a great offensive mind, of course. And we were high on Jefferson when he did in Arkansas. And so I think, he's got a potential to have a pretty big year for UCF again here in the Big 12 and throwing their name in the ring for one of those top teams. Again, there's a bunch of them. We're going to lay one more big number here. We're going to lay 24 with Georgia against Kentucky. And I think this boils down to Georgia is really, really good. And Kentucky might not be able to score. Kentucky might not be good. I mean, I think it's kind of all there is to this, right?
Yeah. And I myself had even multiple times, like in the years where I thought Kentucky was good, I have tried to convince myself that this is a lot of points. Like it's 17 points, it's 21 points, it's 24 points. Like I need to take those points with Kentucky because Kentucky, look at the pace that Kentucky has, look at the defense.
Both paces are insanely low.
Yeah. And so in past years, I have been on the opposite side of this. I've been saying you need to take the points with Kentucky. It's hard, just the way that Kentucky plays, it's hard for them to lose by that many points. Not saying that this year. I think Georgia is, I don't want to say just as good as they've ever been, but still clearly the number one team in the country. And I think Kentucky is down. So, come back to me next year. Maybe I'll be saying something different. Maybe Kentucky would have turned a corner, but I think we need to pounce now before the markets realize that Kentucky may be pretty not good this year.
Worth pointing out, I said this last week, I think I said it the week before. The model has Georgia's offense higher than their defense. And I know the calling card for Georgia has been their defense, but starting last year, it really flipped. And I mean, the defense is still really good, don't get me wrong, but the offense really looks good. Yep. And we've got them now at the number one offense. I mean, you've got an future NFL quarterback. You've got pretty much a future NFL offensive line. Yeah. I mean, they can move the ball, and they might not score as many points as some teams because they aren't really playing fast, but they're efficient and they're going to score a lot of points. And this is one where, I mean, the model's projecting, an average of 9 points for Kentucky. I don't see how Kentucky scores 9 points. I could be wrong. Yeah. I think 6 is going to be 6 or 7 would be lucky. I kind of think 3. This feels like a good team total under for Kentucky because I know I'm talking about Georgia's offense, but Kentucky's not going to be able to score. Yeah, Georgia's only going to be limited on scoring because, again, of how many possessions there are. But this game could really be 42-3, and I'd be like, yeah, that seems about right. I mean, there's really just so many ways that Georgia wins this one big. They're just so talented. And like you said, it's almost like a buy now before the market realizes that Georgia is this good. Because people know Georgia's good, but they don't maybe realize that they're number one in the country. And might not even be close at this point. We'll see how things progress. We may change our minds, of course, later. But right now, and then the Kentucky might not be very good. So a couple things to kind of buy now, because if this game goes like it might, then it may not be easy to buy at these prices. Later, Colorado and Colorado State, unfortunately, still not to the After Dark slate yet, but we have a B grade over on 58.5. We really have 58. That's a key number there, but the average points in this one puts you in the 60s. We look at the pace of these two teams. You look at what happened in last year's game that went to overtime. There were just a lot of points in it. I kind of think the same thing's going to happen here. We saw Colorado's defense get shredded last week. Offensively, they should have a whole lot more success against Colorado State than Nebraska. So expecting a lot of points in this one. Cousin Jared, only 58.5. We aren't getting into the key number of 58, but we still think it's worth a play. Tell us more.
I have on this show been critical of Colorado. I don't again, what we know from Colorado, I just don't see that performance offensively 2 weeks in a row. And of course, different levels of competition here as well, with how the game played last year. And I believe this was the game where Travis Hunter got the blatantly late hit that lacerated his spleen or something, ended up missing a month of the season.
I think so, because this was the rivalry and they were feisty with each other.
Yeah. There's no love lost between these two teams. I think either team would take the opportunity to run up the score in situations where some teams might just be running the ball. I think both these teams might be throwing the ball. I mean, let's face it, Colorado's going to be throwing the ball because they can't run the ball, period. So they'll still be throwing the ball. I just think I think this is a situation that is ripe for lots of points for both sides, only some of which have to do with football.
Both quarterbacks in last year's game threw for over 300 yards. There were some turnovers that prevented points. This game had 56 points in regulation before going to overtime. 56 seems about the low end. 55 seems about the low end of this. So I think if we lose this, it's probably going to be close because that sort of thing could happen like last year, but there's a lot of ways that it gets into the upper 50s and into the 60s. And of course, there's a lot of different options in the 60s for this one. You've got, they get the same two quarterbacks, and the one for Colorado State, not very good, but lit up this Colorado defense. And that's the same sort of thing. I think he's going to have a lot of success. And I think Colorado's going to be able to move the ball at will because Colorado, as we've seen, can score pretty well on some of these weaker defenses. And, honestly, North Dakota State might have a better defense, probably has a better defense than Colorado State. This is probably the weakest defense that they faced all season.
Yeah,
to be
that's true. Yeah.
Going to go over there. Last game here, no picks on the after games. We do have projections and leans for all of them over on Dub Club, but this one's an 8 p.m. Eastern start, Maryland and Virginia. We're going to go over the key number of 55, projecting 58.5. So we think 58, 59 is where this should be, folks. This one's already gone up to 57.5, 58. So this is one where if you didn't get it already on Dub Club, you missed a lot of the value getting the over or the push at 55. Cousin Jared, why do you like, first, ignore the number, just why do you like the over in this? Why do you think there'll be a lot of points?
I have been critical of blanking on his name now, but the head coach at Virginia who came from Clemson. And we saw Clemson at the same time that he left. And I need you to look up his name because it's killing me now. As soon as Elliott, I'm going to get Tony Elliott. Since he left, he left, and then they went through the quarterback run there of Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, all left at the same time. That coincided with Clemson's offense going downhill, and I know for a fact, I've said on here multiple times that maybe it wasn't Tony Elliott. It was the quarterbacks that were kind of driving the Clemson offenses. Quarterbacks are gone. They've both kind of fallen off. We are finally starting to see that Virginia offense show signs of life. One of the games that I looked long and hard at last week was Wake Forest and Virginia, the over in that game. I couldn't bring myself to do it because both teams, they were super efficient. They looked good, but they were both playing nobodies in week one. I didn't want to overreact, but sure enough, I watched that Wake Forest Virginia game, watched the end of that one. And those offenses both at this point, like just when Wake Forest is playing, like Dave Clawson just has a system there. They can plug in freaking Hank Bachmeier, who has traveled the country looking for somebody who would take his services. And they're able to make Hank Bachmeier look good. And so Wake Forest offense is plug and play. Virginia looks like they have finally found something offensively, which makes me happy. Makes me very happy. Maryland, same thing. Mike Locksley. I know that Tua's little brother is now gone, but Mike Locksley's offense.
But the backup last year and last couple of years when Tua's been out was pretty good.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of Mike Locksley's system. He's always been a pretty good offensive coach, going back to I think he was at Alabama when he was hired on at Maryland. So
Sideline has Billy Edwards Jr. as the 12th rated quarterback.
Wow. Wouldn't have thought that high. But if Edwards can avoid the back-breaking turnovers that have plagued Maryland for a few years now, Maryland will be a perfectly respectable football team. So I think you can
see on the screen we've got them ranked 35, which would be probably their best team ever.
Yeah, I don't know about ever, but
it's not close.
I mean, maybe since Vernon Davis. Maybe since Vernon Davis was there. It's been a long time. Didn't he run like a 4.4 in the 40 at the combine? As a tight end, anyway.
Probably.
I think there's going to be lots of points in this game, like what I've seen offensively from both teams, and glad that Virginia's offense is finally coming around after a few years of being MIA. So
the follow-up question, if you're with us on Dub Club, you got the 55, great. If you're with us there, just snooze, that's fine too, right? If you're in that boat, or if you're not, and you're hearing this and you're saying, okay, They like over 55. 55 is a key number, projecting in the upper 50s. Now that it's at 57.5, 58, I don't know where the number's going to go, if it's going to keep going up or not.
Mm-hmm.
What is your advice to people there? Are we still playing at 57.5, 58, et cetera? Where does it stop? How are you viewing that?
I am still good with playing this at 57.5 because I don't think Sideline has – I don't think the markets have necessarily caught up to how good these teams are. I think Sideline may be underestimating the Virginia offense slightly. Maybe you could tell me that it's overestimating Edwards on Maryland because, like, if it has him as the 12th best quarterback, maybe that's a little bit a little bit high. But in general, I just really like what I've seen from Virginia offensively so far. And I 57.5, I'm still good with, but that's definitely it. Like when Sideline's projecting 58.5, I'm not going to play at 58. I want to win at 58. I don't want to push at 58.
All right. Just to look back on my comment, Maryland had 3 10-win seasons, 2001, 2002, 2003. I was in high school in those years, so I didn't watch a lot of college football because I was playing baseball.
You weren't watching Ralph Friedgen?
I was not. My time was pretty much all sucked up to play baseball. So I think that's why I completely miss it, because those years just don't like when I get to college, I have more free time. So I watch more college football then, even though I was still playing ball. But college is a little more different schedule, right, than high school. And so those 3 years don't even exist. So for my mind, that doesn't exist. And so we're going back to like the next best Maryland season would have been when they were winning the Cherry Bowl back in 1985, which the Cherry Bowl doesn't even exist anymore. And I didn't exist in 1985. So that's why I'm thinking about in my lifetime the best Maryland teams. But again, those 3 years that were just a void in my life. In the early 2000s.
And that was Ralph Friedgen's first year. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, they did really well. And then they did actually okay in his last year, 9-4. That probably, the best. Again, if you could finish at number 35, that'd be probably your best Maryland teams, really. Since a couple of those teams there in the early to mid aughts, depending on exactly what you want to qualify there. So, could be pretty good. And not to be remiss here, the model does like the Maryland defense, but when you look at Virginia's pace, you look at what they did last week with the bump pace that Sideline's giving them after that last week's game. Maryland's pace being that high, like you said, Virginia having a little bit of an offense here, a little bit of an offense, a little bit of pace. Defense is going to break at some point, and so we think more points than not.
Man, and I wasn't wrong. 2003, you said 2001, 2003. 2003, Vernon Davis was a freshman on that team. So I was close enough.
Your memory on this stuff is, again, as we've long talked about, is better than mine. All right, that's it for this show. That's 24 games, 22 picks, more on Dub Club, more updates coming throughout the week, all sorts of goodies for you. Again, trial, discounts, all sorts of stuff. Cousin Jared, what did I miss? What did I forget?
Get in on the NFL picks early in the season. The A grades for the NFL picks profitable once again. It's almost like
for your membership.
Yeah, almost like clockwork at this point. Never take it to the bank before it happens. But I have great confidence in the NFL model even after 1 week. So make sure you're here for all the NFL content as well.
Yep, well said. All right, that's all we've got for you again. Thanks for watching another 2-hour episode. Hopefully you're enjoying all the long shows that we're doing here. Again, thanks for watching. We wish you the best of luck this weekend. Stay tuned for NFL coming in about 24 hours from now with Jake. We'll run down some of the NFL games and remind you, as always, that you can eat your betting money, but please do not bet your eating money.